you to just say a hi to everybody, tell everybody about your kids' ages and how you're really doing right now during the pandemic. And we can start with you, Debbie.
Okay, fantastic. I have 5 children. They are 3, 9, 11, 13, and 14 going on 15. So I have all ages, I'm in all stages, and that absolutely presents a unique set of circumstances. But overall, we're doing okay. We're trying to keep good perspective and recognizing that, not everything can get done that it once did. So it's absolutely stressful, no doubt about that. But we're trying to relish in those family dinners, neighborhood walks. Sometimes it takes a bit of coercion. The threat of taking away somebody's phone typically works, but just trying to model positivity through the struggle, because we have to recognize that it's a struggle for us as moms, but it's also a struggle for our kids, and they too have their individual journeys. So just, modeling that positivity right now is absolutely key.
Absolutely. Jill, how are you doing?
Hey everyone. I'm doing well. I have 2 children, 6 and 8, 2 little girls. And I feel like they're probably the right age, if there was like a good age to be going through this. They're just really flexible still at this age, and the social, while they miss school and they miss their friends, it's not like the social requirements of like middle school or high school, right? And that need to be connected. And so really I've seen their relationship really deepen, our entire family's relationship really deepen. But I miss the world. I miss connection. I miss working out at like my workout studio, all of those kinds of things, and just, getting back into that world. And what I really miss is seeing all of, we have about 50 employees at Motherly that are primarily working mothers. I miss seeing them without the strain of this in their lives, right? Without having to, we've always had a work from home community or staff, but I miss seeing them not having children in the background. Not that we don't, appreciate, enjoy that, but just like the strain that causes for everyone.
Yeah, we're different women when our children aren't around. I completely get it. Erin, how are you doing?
Oh, Christine, I'm okay. So I think that it's such a loaded question these days, right? When we are asking that of one another, because there's sort of the real story or the story that can happen quickly. So I have a 4-year-old William and a 21-month-old Charlie. So 2 boys, and I'm back in my condo in Chicago right now so that you all would be able to hear me, but we are sheltering in place at my mother's in Michigan. So they are there so that we have another adult to help us, since we are 2 full-time remote working parents. And I think, like Debbie and Jill were saying, kids are so resilient, and we can really look to them to sort of be present and be in the moment. Anxiety is worrying about what's going to happen and sort of thinking of the worst case scenarios. And it doesn't really do us any good. And something that I'm learning from my son, who has been building forts every day, multiple forts around the house, that's his way of coping. And I think it's a good example to me of something that I'm probably doing, just not as overtly. When I'm creating a nice space for me to work in a corner in the house, and I'm buying really plush pillows all of a sudden and wanting to take more baths where I'm feeling, again, protected and having some control over my life. So I think looking to our kids and trying to adopt some of the coping strategies that they have created and making them obviously relevant to us and our age is one of the best ways that we can deal with this right now.
You know what? You just made me realize that that's probably why my son keeps hiding under my covers. He's 5 and I have an 8-year-old too. You're right. That's a good age, Jill.
I will send you the link. There is an actual link that this is real. This is a real coping strategy for kids right now.
Okay, everybody give a heart, comment with a heart for these ladies. I really appreciate them taking the time to speak with us right now. So I'm going to dig into the business side of you guys. Can you share a little bit about your companies and your mission?
Sure. I'll go again. So Our mission is to support working parents. What we do is we connect working parents one-on-one with parenting coaches, career experts, and provide them with everything they need to be successful both at home and in the workplace, because everybody here today knows that we can't take the mom out of the employee. The two are very intertwined. And until we have that support for our working parents in the workplace, for moms and dads, we're not going to be able to achieve our personal and our professional goals. So that is our mission, to empower employees so they can do it all.
Excellent. And Jill?
Yeah, so Motherly, we've been around for about 5 years, and we are on a mission to redefine motherhood with and for this modern generation. We are woman-centered, we are expert-driven, and we are empowering women through content, community, and commerce. Now, we just launched our Motherly shop. So really trying to provide 360-degree solutions that really appreciate and celebrate the multidimensionalness of this woman, that she's been layering roles for a very long time and trying to, again, provide her with information, inspiration, and all the things that she needs.
Awesome. And Erin?
Yeah, we launched Have Her back in September of 2019. It was not part of our first year plan to have a global pandemic sort of challenge everything. But I think what it does teach you is that you always need to be ready to pivot, that you can't rest on your laurels. But my two co-founders, Carolyn Detman and Pamela Culpepper, and I left our comfortable corporate jobs to focus on gender equity full time. And so at Have Her Back, we are consultants that work with really big, brave companies to tackle gender equity, diversity, and workplace culture differently. Because we feel like we've all been doing this for a long time. That it's rare to find someone that doesn't think these things are important, but the problem is we haven't seen enough progress. And so what we do is we come in and we really help them go from good intentions to intentional action, and to match authentically what they say they care about with respect to those things against what they're actually doing, the actions they're taking to advance them, because those two things can no longer be separate.
Absolutely. Making them walk the walk and talk the talk at the same time.
That's right.
Absolutely. So just as Tanya's panel did, guys, send in your questions and I'll ask them as they become relevant to the conversation. We're talking about the workplace changes due to COVID and its impact on parents. And I want to start with you, Jill, because you've released what I consider to be my pleasure publication, the annual State of Motherhood Survey, the third annual. So can you share with us the COVID-19 related data findings? Are you finding a socioeconomic divide?
So yes, we do at Motherly this is our third annual State of Motherhood Survey. It is the largest statistically significant and weighted survey of millennial mothers in the United States right now. And it's really important because Motherly, we feel we really take very seriously the fact that we are the voice of this generation of mothers. And so in order to do that, we want to make sure we're hearing directly from them. And so this year, again, we also did not anticipate a pandemic. And so we were closing out our survey right around the time the pandemic was really heating up. And so we added an addendum this time to the survey. I can actually put in here all of the information. I can put in like the link maybe, and Blessings perhaps can share it with everyone if anyone's interested. There we go. So this is information about the State of Motherhood, and we kind of combined the two. And thank you, Christine, for always loving it and covering it when you do. We found moms suffering. 74% are doing worse. Big surprise, right? Than they were right before the pandemic. The socioeconomic differences are there, as they always are, but it's actually the ethnic differences, the actual different ethnicities and how they're being impacted. And so we found, interestingly, that the African-American respondents were designated, a higher percentage designated as essential workers, but that also means that they had a lower proportion of layoffs compared to Hispanic and white Caucasian mothers, for example. And so only 14% had lost their jobs. And for Hispanics, it was more like 40% said that they or their spouse had lost their jobs. And for white Caucasian women, it was around 32%. And as a result, African-American women and mothers specifically are actually feeling more the same than the other ethnicities as well, because these things are so intertwined. People that have the ability to be part of the cloud economy or are essential workers are less likely to have lost their jobs. And that layer of stress and how you're doing makes a huge difference. But those that are dual working, I think most of us here, two working parents are also feeling that strain of having children at home without childcare and without those things that make that very delicate dance. And so that has been the strain that I know we'll talk a bit more, here as well. But that's the thing that is really driving the stress for most families. It's coupled with the economic fears as well as the fact that they're trying to maintain a job while having children underfoot.
Yeah, just incredible. Erin, you've also recently completed a study on employees during COVID-19. How are moms feeling right now about their employers?
Moms are struggling. And I think what we noticed that was really fascinating is that 31% of dads said that they were having an extremely difficult time with caregiving while at home right now, against only 14% of moms. And I think what's important to note about that, it's not that moms aren't having a hard time, it's just that we are used to this in a way that so many of our the men, if we're in a heterosexual relationship, are not, right? We are the bearers of the caregiving responsibility. Therefore, we have navigated it over time. So just because we're carrying it doesn't mean it's not heavy. And I think what's going on right now is that because we are doing so many things virtually and people are seeing this collision of our personal and professional lives, this is the sort of virtual reality training in empathy that I think our world has needed, and specifically for women with careers. Because when you are sitting here on a call, on a panel, presenting, pitching, trying to get funding, and your kid is running behind you on screen, right? Or you're muting every time your child is screaming, or, as Blessing was saying, you're breastfeeding in the middle of this, that is actually what's happening in a mother's brain throughout the day. So all you're seeing is what's happening for her, what she's managing, the load that she's carrying, the unpaid labor that she is navigating in addition to her career. You just get to see it, right? So I think that what is tough for mothers right now is that you don't have any break. It's not that these pockets aren't different than they usually are, but we're not getting any time away. And I don't know, I'm sure this is the same for you ladies. And I have two boys, and I've heard that boys just have a thing for their moms. So if I'm in the house, they will find me, right? My husband can be in the same room with them, go the entire day back-to-back calls, and they will not bother him once. I will be on a different floor, hiding, locked away, and they just know that I'm there and they find me. So that stress, I think what we need to recognize in our own homes, and then also with the people that we're working with, whether they are our clients or they are our prospects or they are our counterparts, is that we're putting on a good show as much as we possibly can, but we're really tired. We're really tired. We're really struggling, and we deserve to express that stress and that anger. And I think women, so often, that's not an attractive thing, right? No one wants to see that. They just want you to be positive. But we need to be able to be honest about what's going on, or we're going to break.
Erin, do you understand how you have just ripped my chest right open and you have my heart? Like, that is exact. I don't want to compare anybody's struggle, but boy moms, yes, the boys just, they attach. And it's just so hard being a mother of a 5-year-old going through this.
It is something. And, I do get a little bit frustrated with older parents that say things like, I know, but just enjoy it because, and Deb has 1,000 children, so she has probably the range of things happening in her house right now. But when older parents say, enjoy it now, here's the deal. You can say that because you're out of it, right? And so what we need to be able to acknowledge is that nope, you're in a really tough time. And I'm going to let you be there, and I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm not going to try to move you through it. That's what this is about too. It's about sitting in the discomfort of what we're experiencing. And that discomfort comes with all the things that Jill just talked about, which are total racial inequities, gender inequities that are coming to the forefront because of this pandemic. I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm sorry. But I don't know if you all saw the USA Today op-ed by Melinda Gates, where she said, this pandemic I pulled it up because I was like, I don't want to misquote her. Inevitably, some people will argue that we should table conversations about gender equality until we get through this emergency, but the disease and its effects are not gender neutral. Our response cannot be either.
Absolutely. Debbie, how do you feel the new workplace changes will impact mom's career?
I'm sorry, you cut out at the last second.
Okay. How do you feel the new workplace changes will impact a mom's career trajectory?
Yeah, so I think this is a very interesting question, right? Because we know the new workplace is going to include remote work. This has become natural. And what we've seen previously is that working moms would go back after leave and say, hey, can I have some flexibility here? Can I work from home maybe 1 or 2 days a week? And employers would hem and haw. And, finally, if they were lucky, they'd get to a point where it's like, all right, trial basis. Well, this has been like a global trial basis for everybody. And I think we've proved ourselves. We knew we can do it. And imagine if our kids were back in school and back in childcare, just how good we can do it. So remote work is absolutely here to stay. And so that's going to allow many more mothers who may have off-ramped to come back to the workplace. So that's very exciting. But to your point of the career trajectory piece, that's a part that I'm a little bit worried about, because if we have less opportunities to have face time, we need to place an onus on the employers to expand those opportunities for people who are working remotely. And in this case, we're talking working moms potentially, to have them have the opportunity to get a second set of eyes on their work, or be able to be exposed to other leaders within the company or the organization, so they can have that growth. Because what we've typically seen in the past, like pre-pandemic, is that when people were working remotely, those were not always the jobs that, would sail you to the top or let you climb that ladder. So there's no reason that those jobs can't do that. We know I have a fully remote organization, as does Jill, as do many of us here, and we know how successful employees can be working from home. So there's going to be more opportunities, but we're going to have to continue to reframe the conversation and expectations of the employers, to just make sure that they're more cognizant of creating that path to leadership and success.
And I want to jump back to a question that was asked of you. What makes the coaches different than, say, coaches through an organization's EAP or ERG?
Okay, so great question. Okay, so ERGs are, typically they work together and it's like peers. And EAPs, typical like a hotline, and a lot of those will be able to connect you with lactation consultants. EAPs have a utilization rate south of 5%. Our utilization rate is north of 65%. And what's different is who we connect employees with. So we offer assistance from conception to college, everything from fertility and family planning to working one-on-one with somebody to put together that transition plan when they go back to work, like actually looking over the document that they're going to present to their boss. We help with sleep, we help with lactation, we help with career, we help with co-parenting issues. Who amongst us has not fought with our co-partner right now, during this time? So those are the issues, those buttons of stress that really make it more difficult to be a working parent, that we lend a helping hand with. So, our coaches, think of it as like having a back pocket resource for anything that affects working parenthood. Your kids are about killing each other. We have someone to help us with sibling rivalry. You're about to take your husband's head off. We have someone who can help.
Can you find me a new husband? Because think about this. So I have a question for all of you from the audience. What is your best advice for balancing work and motherhood right now? And we can start with Erin.
Pick one. So balance is not a thing. And I've always, I've sort of switched this notion of like work-life balance to like finding equilibrium, meaning it's not going to be equal. It's going to be ever shifting. There are going to be days where you're spending 100% on something, and then other days when it's flipped. In the pandemic, this is a completely different experience, right? So you really have to pick one of those things in the moment that you are going to do well, and then focus on that. Because you cannot sit here and do like none of us right now can do a good job of making our kids lunch, right? Or putting together a pitch deck to get investor funding. So we have to pick one. So just pick one and block it off throughout the day. And also don't forget to pick one area of time for yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you are just constantly giving to others in your career, in your family, and you are never taking any of that time for yourself, there you will run out of gas, right? And so you do need to block off time and covet it and protect it like it's a client meeting. It's amazing to me that we will do anything and to not miss an hour that we have for a client, and yet we will completely rake over any personal time that we have to do some self-care. So I say that that's really how to handle that.
Awesome. And Jill?
So this is, I've always used the term work-life integration, and this is integrated like never before, obviously, right now. One, I think is having, if you're privileged enough to have a partner, to really have those hard conversations right now around how to divide. My husband and I have blocked off time so that we can truly dedicate, and you're on first with the children right now while I'm on first for work, and we've planned our schedules around that accordingly. To getting, that personal time, multitasking still has to be a thing at sometimes. And so I'm doing a lot of, I'm trying to get some steps in, since I'm not able to work out, and that really helps. And I'm walking during conference calls, and trying to really get out, which I'm finding is really great for the creativity and brain as well. So I think that's an important part. And then it's also, let's just be gentle with yourself right now. Our expectations on ourselves and on our children are very, very high right now, and not always developmentally appropriate for them or for ourselves. This is an extreme time. You are not just working from home, you are working during a pandemic from home with your children home. And so understanding that, integrating those two things, like, it's okay. I will be having an investor call and my children will walk in. And this is the reality right now. So give yourself some grace and give others some grace as well.
And Debbie?
Absolutely. So echoing on both the points that have already been made, to Erin's point, I don't like the word balance either. I too always use the word integration. And I always say we're not tightrope walkers. There is no balance there. It's about, like's been said, doing one thing at a time. It's hard with 5 kids. I do the same things. I set aside time. My kids know it's a joke. My teenage daughter came to me last night. She needs to discuss something, and she's like, "Can I get it on your calendar?" And so it's a joke, to the point where even my 3-year-old will be like, "I want in on the calendar. I want mommy's calendar." And so that's the way I personally handle it. So it's going to be different for everybody. I'm very, I need to know what the day's looking like. So the day before, like Jill said, I talk about it with my husband. We try, it doesn't always happen on a day-to-day basis. We try, but at least once a week, or twice a week, we see what's coming up, and really planning, is what helps with diets. It's what helps with, getting in shape. It's also what helps with your kids. And echoing what Jill said, also, it's about reframing our expectations, but also setting our expectations for our kids. Right now, it's really hard to handle work and distance learning with our children. And I've learned that the night before, if I tell my children, what's on tap tomorrow, what are the latest emails we've gotten from our children, what's to be expected, when I will or will not be able to exit my office to make them lunch, as was said. Just as I entered my office today to get in on this, I had my teenage son saying, "But I'm starving," And so he went and he found Dad. One part of the lucky part of being all under one roof right now, but it is hard. There is no doubt. There's no doubt to that. There's never going to be a time, no matter how much our employers give or how much grace we take with ourselves, we're always going to struggle. I think that's just the nature of the beast. And so we just have to recognize that it's normal, and it's going to be forever age appropriate for us to struggle with that.
And Debbie, I want to follow up with a question for you, one from the audience that's tied into another one that I was thinking. So to Jill's point, this isn't working from home, and obviously there are going to be some pitfalls in productivity. And some of the women in the audience have fears about the fact that from an employer perspective, that lower productivity will look bad for them as employees. So how do you feel employers can address unconscious caregiver bias as the workplace changes due to COVID-19? And then how do you think that relates to the corporate assumption of what it means to be a great leader?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot there.
Yeah.
So quickly with unconscious bias, it's called unconscious for a reason, right? So most leaders don't even realize that they have it. So we need to shine a light on this. So as employers, I encourage training. It's something that Mom Work does. We do a lot of leadership training, manager sensitivity training, because we always say, you've risen through the ranks, not necessarily because you're a great leader. And that goes to your question about the assumption. We can't assume that people are just natural leaders. These are skills that can be taught, that we can teach our children, that we can improve upon on ourselves and within an organization. These are skills that we can give to our leaders and the people that are managing our most important asset, our people. So we need to shine light on this. We need to educate them about, what it really means. And for the employee who feels like they might not necessarily be giving as much productivity as they once did, it's a matter of having those conversations and using this as an opportunity to show off your own leadership skills, to be able to highlight that you have a finite amount of time and you need to prioritize. I mean, nobody can prioritize like a working mom, right? I think before motherhood, I would have a long to-do list. I would just work longer. I would get more, shove more in the day. You can't do that after leave. You're very quickly able to say that's important, that's not, and that is, and that's a sign of a great leader. So, we always talk about, we always consult with working parents when they come back from leave about how to utilize those newly found skills to take them to their next level in their career. And this is the same thing that we have to do right now. So having those conversations with your manager where it doesn't come from a place of worry, but a place of reality. Like, this is the reality now. You're only going to be able to get so much, to be able to have so much to do, and maybe ask to have a junior person brought on your team who maybe doesn't have children, who might relish in that opportunity to learn from you right now and be able to work underneath you. And so we need to empower everybody. We need to empower our employees, empower our leaders, and not just assume that leaders are born. They're absolutely made.
Absolutely. That's awesome, Debbie. Jill, let's get into childcare and education and what is keeping me up at night. So you're on the pulse of what working moms need right now. What are some current concerns you're hearing about childcare and the return to school in the fall?
A lack of consistency. That is the primary concern. I think we can all agree with that. The lack of consistency is what's worrying parents the most. In many cases, the expectation is that work from home will continue for some period of time. But again, this is not sustainable to work from home without childcare. And so I think the concerns right now, when you're looking at different plans in different school districts, they seem to go across three different ways. One, it's everyone's returning to school, wearing masks and doing that. And there's a relatively, structured way in which that will happen. But the expectation is what happens when there's an outbreak of some sort in that school or in that cohort of people. And does that mean that children are then coming back into the home? Like, can we predict this? So that's one. Two is, are they going to go Monday, split schedules of some sort? Well, how do you get all of your children on the same split schedule? How does that impact working parents then as well? Because even as childcare starts to open up, working parents with school-age children are having a hard time understanding, do you also need backup full-time care for your children just to mitigate school absences and going back and forth? And so that lack of consistency seems to be the most pressing concern for parents, which, COVID-19 is teaching all of us that we can't predict the future, and to try to, again, just be in the present of where we are. But when you're a working parent and you are trying to move forward in your career and advance things, you've got to know what to expect. You've got to know what's around the corner. And this is really taking away that certainty for us.
This is just like spinning mothers out of control. Our love for control. So Erin, we've seen more companies like Facebook and Twitter allowing employees to work from home indefinitely. How do you believe this move supports business growth, but at the same time supports employee mental health?
Yeah, well, I think what we really need to designate is that right now we are not working from home, WFH as we knew it 6-7 months ago. I sort of felt like it needed a rebrand. It actually stands for working from here now, and that means something different for everyone. For those of us with kids that are home with them, it might mean that we are a parent that day and also a cook and an educator and a referee and a housekeeper and an activity director, right? So this is not a good representation of what remote working is possible, what's possible, what it used to be, and what it will be once we are through this. So I think that we have to help those that had biases against remote working understand that this is not a good representation of what it's supposed to be. And yet we're still seeing that people are more productive. And outside of the fact that there are major stressors around the fact that we're in a pandemic, they're happier. They've gotten hours back of their commute. They're not traveling as much. So that is helping with mental health. Unfortunately, it's again up against the crisis that we're in. So I think that until we're through sort of this in panic stage, we're not going to have a good look at what is going on. But as we've said earlier, this is here to stay. And any company that has the ability to work remotely, meaning you are not in an essential business that requires that someone is physically in a location for you to deliver your service, you've always been able to do this. And they've been caught sort of in a bit of a lie, right? And it's like Debbie was saying earlier, that it was often mothers that were coming back that were requesting this flexibility, requesting a couple of days to work remotely, that were told on a case-by-case basis whether or not they were allowed to do it. And then they were often told, you can do it because you're a rock star, but don't tell anybody, right? Because we don't want everyone doing this. So it just created this culture of a very secretive, special thing. It was not for everybody. And I think it was, again, based on kind of old school leaders that had never had this as a possibility. Corporate America has had its cake and eaten it too for way too long, right? With the technological advancements that we've had, they have access to us when we leave the office, and yet they don't want our personal lives to infiltrate that 9 to 5 middle day. And I know that we have two ladies on here, and we really are remote as well. There just happens to be only 3 of us. But you can do all of this remotely. You cannot do it the same way when you have kids here. And so, as Jill was saying, until we get the schooling and the caregiving piece figured out, we cannot send people back anywhere. Like, I can't just leave my kids at home and say, like, hey, best of luck, but I'm going in today because we're in phase 3 here in Chicago, so we're reopening. So leaders, like, in our study, what we found was that this crisis is going to be one of the most important truth tellers around caregiver bias of our lifetime. You have working dads, many of whom are leaders of these companies, that are now experiencing the struggle and the juggle in a way that they never have. So what are they going to do, right? When they return to work, and I'm not even saying physically, but I'm just talking about when we are more on the front lines of our working environment than we have been, are they going to do better for women? Or is this going to deepen their bias? And I think as women, it is our job to demand that this is going to be a major shift, and we need to change the broken workforce infrastructure that has held us back for as long as it has.
So wait, I can't ship my kids to you, Erin, when I go to work and just tell them just deal?
Christine, you can. You can. But mine are really fun. And so I am happy to let you have them and build a couple of forts for you.
Right, exactly. Give you a 4-year-old on top
of it. You just say the word. Say the word.
So ladies, we're reaching the end of our discussion. So final thoughts, I'd love to hear them. And then also, if you could share one word that you think the future of home, work, and care will look like. And we can start with Debbie.
Okay. Final thoughts, just to echo what Erin said, we started in this space coaching working moms, and very quickly employers started to say, well, we want to do something gender neutral. What do you have for working dads? And we're like, oh, we'll coach them too. And what we were seeing, and I was seeing it personally in my own life because I have that 15-year-old and that 3-year-old, is that dads are different. The people that are part of the cohort with the 15-year-old, they don't do diapers. My 3-year-old, they do diapers, they clean tables, they mop floors. Like, it's a different dad. And so what we're seeing in the workplace now is that first-time dad doesn't have a role model. And so we've been speaking to dads about the struggles even before this pandemic. And to echo what Erin said, we were saying, we are always talking about how it's a little bit of ironic here that dads are the reason that we're going to be changing this conversation. And I think this whole pandemic has, increased that statement triplefold at least. So it'll be really interesting to see how the needle shifts. And as long as it shifts, I don't care who's the reason it shifts by. Final word, integrated for sure. That is what everything's going to look like in the future.
That's interesting. Jill, what about you?
So I'm really hopeful. And so my word would be opportunity. I really do think that there are, as trying as all of this is, there are so many gifts that this pandemic has given us. It has given us an ability to show the world that you can work from home, that the future of work can look like this. It has shown businesses, I mean, my husband's in finance, and there are radical shifts, and there are people that are, that were setting the rules, the patriarch of right, setting the rules in this, that are recognizing that we're not commuting back into New York City for a very, very long time. And we've got to find other ways to make this work. And this does work. Like, I see how this happens. We also see that fathers and partners in general are taking on part of this burden. There is more balance. Black women, Black mothers have said that in our report that now are seeing 50% of a split, between their partners working from home. All ethnicities are seeing that increase right now. While mothers are still the primary caregiver, they're seeing a split in that workload that we've never seen before. And so I think this has really, unveiled, taken away the veil of a lot of this mental load that we've been carrying a lot on our own. And not to say that we're not still carrying a heavier burden, but I think that you can't hide it anymore, right? It's there. There's a visualness to it now, as we discussed. And so I think, what I think about for the future is really opportunity. This has given voice to a lot of the problems and challenges. Prior to the pandemic, Motherly, with a number of other organizations, had declared 2020 the year of the mother. And while this has absolutely become the year of COVID-19, it is also the year that we really are starting to come to terms with and value the importance of caregiving. And that is powerful. That is an opportunity for the future that we can build upon.
Absolutely. I support that initiative too. I often think, wow, how serendipitous that this was the year that the working mother was put on the forefront of the spotlight, just as nurses, as teachers, and then just those who are able to work remote. It really shows that females are the backbone of our country. Erin, what are your thoughts?
Yes, to that 100 times. The phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, I like to say mothers are the necessity of invention. And I really believe that if you have an issue or a challenge, give it to a mom. She will figure it out. She'll do it quickly. She'll delegate. And so I think that this is where we thrive. We thrive in crisis. What I don't love is that we are being prioritized only because we're in crisis, right? We shouldn't have to have our backs against a wall to be given the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. So I think that, all of the stuff that we've talked about here today, I think it's about rethinking everything. If I'm thinking about a word, my realistic word of what this integration of these three things looks like is it's messy, but I think my positive word is that I really want it to be equitable. And equitable is a very different word than equal, right? Equal means that two people are at the same place and they have the same thing. Equity takes into account what it took for them to get there. And so for women, for people of color, that journey is often much more challenging and push them back 10 rungs every time. And so, I often say that when you have, and I'll say this, if you have a white guy and then you have an African-American woman that are at the same job, same level, if you really look at what it took the two of them to get there, she is actually much more capable and likely creative and a better producer because of the adversity that she's had to overcome. So the role right now is for companies, it's for the workplace to rethink everything. You cannot bring people back to this office without throwing out your HR book and your policies and starting over, because this is a totally new world that we're living in. And I think that, women, we're 51% of the population, we're 80% of consumer buying power. 1 in 3 of us are on the front lines right now. We have the ability to really decide what this looks like. This is kind of like the great American walkout right now. What is it going to take for us to walk back in? Because without us, the economy goes away and everything falls down, including our family structures. So it's time for us to sort of stop saying, is it okay if we do this? Are you all right if we sort of, no, let's just demand what's needed and say, this is the way that it's going forward. And if you want us there, that's how it's going to be. It's our chance to sort of demand what we have deserved from the very beginning and change the workforce of the future.
I mean, you've said it all. You've said it so succinctly. I think that that's a perfect place for us to wrap up this panel. Yes, you testified.
I am fired up, ladies. Okay, and it is too early.
You were in that Chicago condo, loving it with no kids. I love it. Debbie, Jill, Aaron, thank you guys so much. Please, everyone who listened, give these ladies hearts as comments. They're very busy women. I really appreciate you taking a moment of your busy time, especially as mothers, to be a part of this panel. So thank you so very much.